Today, we're headed to Dade City. Gonna visit one of the oldest segregated cemeteries in the state of Florida. Certainly the oldest in Dade City. That would be the old Trilby Colored Cemetery. And we'll also be visiting the Chapel Hill Garden Cemetery located in Dade City. Enjoy! We're definitely in the country. Going down a dirt road. Trilby Cemetery, located in Trilby, Florida, in the middle of the country. It was established around the 1870s, and not even quite sure as to how many burials are here or how much acreage that it is, just because there are so many unmarked graves. But let's go in and see what we can see. If you can see behind me, we are in the middle of the country. We saw a lot of cows on our way up. This is located at the end of a dirt road on Trilby Cemetery Street, and if you put it into your Google map, it will tell you that it's on Old Trilby Road. But we found this one, and I'm not even sure if it's the one that I initially wanted to go to. I'm gonna have to, I think it is, because I'm seeing a headstone there that looks like in the pictures that I saw. But it might be the same as, and walking in, all the headstones are facing away from me. That's telling me that this is a segregated cemetery. So I think I am in the right place. So what we were looking for was Old Trilby Colored Cemetery. And that's what I think this is. It's Old Trilby Colored Cemetery. So we're gonna walk around, and there's a lot of history here. So in the early 20s, around the 1920s, Coleman and Ferguson Funeral Home were responsible for a lot of the burials here. And at the time, and even now, it's primarily black or colored cemetery. They were just burying people here, and they would be in unmarked graves. Another thing that's happened is over time, a lot of the older headstones, all of the information has worn off. So even though there's a headstone there, because of the neglect of the cemetery over the years, all of the words have rubbed off the headstones. So we're gonna take a look around, and I'm gonna take some still shots if I see anybody, because there are a few here that I wanted to touch on. If I see any of those folks, I will stop and tell you a bit about them. I'm definitely in the right place, because I've seen a lot of the tombstones. When I was looking up the cemetery and doing the research, I'm seeing a lot of the same tombstones that I saw in some of the pictures online. They have their own little baby burial plot. All of these live to be a year or less, the very small headstones. Now, when I was doing my research online, I also read that back in the 1920s, if you were colored, the deaths really weren't making the paper. Nothing much would be said about somebody who passed away if they were of African American descent. There were only a few, like a handful of notable black deaths back then, or deaths that were significant enough, I guess, to make the paper. And those few are buried here in the Trilby Cemetery. So I'm kind of on a lookout for them. You can kind of see, I mean, it's not real big, just a small cemetery. And there are still burials being made here. I just saw one that passed in 2021. So you can still be buried here at the Trilby Cemetery. It's actually quite beautiful. Right in the middle of the country, a lot of shade trees. It's a really beautiful cemetery. So I wouldn't mind being buried here. But of course, I'm not going to be buried. So, oh, someone passed on my birthday, October 20th. But in 1908. So I'm going to continue to look around. I want to just get a little bit of footage of me being quiet. Seeing a lot of Calhouns buried here. There's an Edwards family plot. And I read online that it was ill-kept, ill-maintained, but it's looking pretty good to me. Maybe it was for some time, and then, you know, the community got together and cleaned it up, but it looks fine. You know, Not really much grass in some areas. It's patchy, and these are newer burials as well, so that could be why. Another one in 2021. So they mentioned this online as well. You'll see just some blocks of concrete here in the ground to mark where someone is buried, but it's probably an unknown. Here is a Hines family plot. Robert Eugene. That's the same name as Robert Eugene Otto from Key West. Owner of Robert the Doll. His name was Robert Eugene, but this is a Robert Eugene Hines. And there's two Hines there as well. One of the things I find odd is that on the Trilby Cemetery sign, there's no mention of it ever being a colored cemetery primarily. This is obviously the one that is talked about online, and there are several people buried here, and I'm unsure if they are in marked graves, just because at that time they were just burying people here and they were not marking the graves. And some of the headstones over time have been rubbed off, so I have not found any of these people. But some of the ones that made headlines were Edgar Donaldson. Edgar Donaldson was a railroad employee, and he worked on the railroad all the livelong day. And he ended up drowning in the Withlacoochee River. He made headlines. Lyman Smith, who was killed in April of 1935. He was actually hit by a train on the railroad or walking near the railroad. So that was another one that made headlines. Again, he's buried somewhere here, but I have yet to see his grave. Will Leake died August 6, 1950. He was actually lynched because he was accused of rape. Howard Will was shot and killed by his wife May 27th, 1935. And George Lark was shot and killed by a sheriff's deputy in 1925 in the month of December. So I haven't really found any of these folks. I think it's very possible that they're in an unmarked grave, or they're in one of the graves whose the tombstone has been rubbed off. It's a nice cemetery to come visit. Beautiful, set in the country. It's just really pretty. And there's a lot of shade trees. It's a nice little walk because it's not a huge cemetery. I'm not sure how many burials are here, but if I had to guess, including the unmarked, would probably be around 1,500 burials. You can pretty much see it all if you just look around. That's it. Right here in the middle of the country. I love it. Beautiful. I've pretty much seen the whole thing. We're gonna head out and get a bite to eat. That's how I have to, it's the only way I can get my husband to drive me to these cemeteries that are kind of far from our house. I have to give him the promise of some good eating, and then I can get him to drive me out here. He's here for the food, so. You can see the cemetery right behind me there. It's really beautiful. I do recommend this one. You may be able to catch something here too. I don't know. Looks like it's never closed. It's always open. So you might want to, for you investigators out there, if you're looking for one that you can come see that doesn't really close, you know, you can come to at night. This one's very secluded, and it would probably be a good one to come and investigate. We're here at Steph's Southern Restaurant, Southern Soul Food. We're gonna go in and get a bite to eat. We're here at Chapel Hill Gardens Cemetery. It's located in Dade City. There's approximately 5,986 burials here. We're gonna go in and see what we could see. This is another pretty small cemetery here in Dade City. While we were out and about, we ran into the Dade City Cemetery as well, and one that we'll have to check out at another time. It was a little bit bigger. But this is another pretty small one, and it's beautiful. The grounds are just very well kept, and there's a lot of space, it looks like. Open, empty space, so it's definitely not to capacity. And right here in the middle of the country. It's very pretty. You can see behind me a lot of the flat headstones out here. So I'll take some pictures and we'll see what we run into. As I'm approaching this niche here with the beautiful monument on top, there's church music playing, and it's just beautiful. You come in here, right up there is where the bell tower is. There's a little sunroof. This is gorgeous, and it's a beautiful, perfect, breezy day. It's not hot, it's nice and cool. This is very cool. Even more to see. Many more. beautiful. You can hear that music. Over here, just to the right of the bell tower, is where all the little babies have been buried. And you'll see that people have left toys and even Easter eggs on their grave sites. Some have these cute little bears. And just different cute little images on the headstones. Lambs and bears and things of that nature. Maybe trucks or planes, trains, and automobiles. Here's one with blocks on it. Alphabet blocks. Ran into an area over here in the corner of the cemetery. Thought it was like a shuffleboard or something. It kind of looked like something like that, or maybe a place to play horseshoes. But it looks like it may be where a lot of unmarked graves are, because there are a bunch of headstones, or not headstones, but I guess nameplates here with the birth and death dates of the departed. So I don't know what that necessarily means. If it's just in this sanded area, obviously there's a lot more nameplates than what's in this little area, but that's interesting. There's another niche over there. We'll do a little walkthrough of that. If you are a baseball fan, you may know this fella, Mike Marshall. Michael Grant Marshall. Born January 15th, 1943, native of Michigan. He was also referred to as Iron Mike. He was a Major League Baseball player for 14 seasons from 1967 to 1981. He was actually a relief pitcher and played for the Detroit Tigers, Seattle Pilots, Houston Astros, Montreal Expos, Los Angeles Dodgers, Atlanta Braves, Texas Rangers, Minnesota Twins, and the New York Mets. In 1974, he set a still undefeated record, which was the Major League Baseball single season record of 106 games pitched. At the time he set this record, he was still with the LA Dodgers. In 724 regular season games, he compiled a 97 win, 112 loss record with a lifetime 3.14 estimated run average in 1,386 innings pitched. Mike passed away May 31st, 2021 due to complications from Alzheimer's. He was 78 years old. So if you're into baseball, you're a big baseball fan, there's a Major League ball player buried right here in Dade City. If you want to come check that out, I wanted to definitely come pay my respects, and it's always nice to find somebody I've been looking for. So thank you very much, Mr. Marshall. I'll see you when I get there. Now check out these niches. There's two right next to each other here, all the way in the back of the cemetery. This cemetery was established in the mid-1950s. So this isn't really an old cemetery per se. The Dade City Cemetery is a lot older, established in the 1870s. But you can kind of tell it's a little newer here because it's very well maintained. Oh, the inside niche isn't open, I guess, today. It's alright, we'll walk around the out. It's pretty big. The church music from the bell tower over there is just beautiful, and it plays, I guess, all day long. That's a first. I've never seen that. That's a good idea for a cemetery, I think, like to have something like that that plays music all the time. Oh, I fix these flowers, they've tipped over. Good size. Good size niche here. You can really see how much open space there is here as well. It's not a congested cemetery at all. Very country-like. There's like a little barn out there over yonder. The office. This is the niche, and then there's one right over here. Plenty of spots open if you're into that. Alright. As you can see, this is another very small, well, pretty small graveyard. Probably about 5 acres of land, not very much. And mostly the flat headstones. So you're not going to find a lot of really old, sort of even cryptic looking headstones here. This is a fairly new cemetery. But there's a barn over next door and that's a funeral home right there. For the most part, not much to see at this cemetery. It's a lot of the flat headstones. I really wanted to find Mike Marshall, and I did. Woohoo! Score for me. It's not often that I get to find the people that I'm looking for, but I was really honored to be able to pay my respects to a Major League Baseball player who was so significant in his time of playing. 14 seasons he played, and set a record. So a record-setting Major League Baseball player right here in Dade City. We're on our way out. It was a beautiful day in Dade City and in Trilby. Trilby is beautiful. It's totally country, rural, there's cows, there's beautiful wildflowers everywhere. I was just a little bit confused about the cemetery itself. If you look online, you do the research, you look at the pictures, you kind of know you're in the right place. But when you map it on your phone, it takes you to Old Trilby Road. And if you go all the way to Old Trilby, it just brings you out on another road and there's no cemetery there. But there's another road called, I think it's simply called Trilby Cemetery. If you go down to the end of that road, that's where the Trilby Cemetery is. I was confused because, for one, it wasn't only colored. We've been to segregated cemeteries before, and all the headstones were facing away from the entrance, just like they do at a segregated cemetery. But as you're walking through, you see that there's a mixture. It's not just black folks. There's white folks mixed in. It doesn't appear to be a colored cemetery anymore, if at one point it was. And then when you read the sign for the Trilby Cemetery, there's no mention of colored or anything like that. So I was a little bit confused about the history of the cemetery itself. The first burials were around 1880s sometime. When you research the history, at one point it was a colored cemetery and they weren't really marking the graves. And today when you go there, you'll see a lot of unmarked graves, but they're just marked with like a block of concrete or something. There's no names or anything. So that's a common thing to see there. I was a little confused as to whether or not I was in the right place, but it'll remain a mystery. It was a cool cemetery anyway. It's definitely one to go and visit if you're an investigator. It was just a great day in Trilby and Dade City. It was a beautiful day. There was a nice breeze and we had a good time. Hope you enjoyed it. If you loved this video, please like, subscribe, and share. It definitely helps the channel out. I'll see you next time.